Ambassador Lee Hyun walked slowly through the massive corridors of the Galactic Assembly Station. The walls glowed with soft blue light that came from living crystals grown by alien species he still could not pronounce correctly. After 15 years as Earth's diplomat to the galaxy, he still felt small in these halls built for beings much larger than humans. His assistant Kim Sora hurried to keep up with his long strides. She carried a tablet filled with reports that grew more troubling each day. Her dark eyes showed worry as she read the latest intelligence briefings aloud. The Vorthak representatives have been meeting in private sessions for 3 days now, she said quietly. Our sources say they are building support for something big. The Quillan Empire has also sent extra delegates. That never happens unless they plan something serious. Lee Hyun nodded but kept walking. He had learned to read the political winds in this place. When old enemies suddenly became friends, when private meetings increased, when extra security appeared in the halls, it meant trouble was coming. And lately, all signs pointed to that trouble being aimed directly at humanity. They passed a group of tall gray Brekton soldiers standing guard near the main assembly hall. The aliens watched Lee Hyun with their large black eyes but said nothing. He had worked with their kind before and knew they respected strength above all else. Lately, they had been less respectful in their dealings with human representatives. What about the colonies? Lee Hyun asked as they entered his office. The room was small by galactic standards but comfortable for humans. Earth had not been given a large space when they joined the assembly 15 years ago. Back then, humanity was seen as a minor species that would probably never amount to much. Kim Sora pulled up another file on her tablet. 3 new settlements this year, all properly documented and approved through the correct channels. Colony ships arrived on schedule. No violations of any galactic laws or treaties. But they still complain, Lee Hyun said, settling into his chair. Through the window, he could see human transport ships docking at the station. More humans were traveling the galaxy now than ever before. Trade was good. Science missions were successful. Human colonies were thriving. Perhaps that was the problem. They say we expand too quickly, Kim Sora continued. The Vorthak claim we take resources that should go to older species. The Quillan worry that human technology advances faster than their comfort level allows. Lee Hyun laughed, but there was no humor in it. 15 years ago they called us primitive. Now they call us dangerous. I suppose that is progress of a sort. His communication device chimed with an incoming message from Earth. The hologram of Park Minho appeared above the desk. Park worked for Earth's Colonial Defense Force from Luna Base and had been Lee Hyun's friend since their academy days. Hyun, we are getting strange readings from our deep space monitors, Park said without greeting. His usually calm face showed tension. Military movements in sectors near human space. Ships moving in coordinated patterns. Someone is planning something. How many ships? Lee Hyun asked. Too many to be normal patrol activity. The Brekton have moved 3 battle groups to positions near our trade routes. The Vorthak have doubled their border patrols. Even the Quillan have ships moving toward human territory. Kim Sora looked up from her tablet with alarm. That would be a violation of the peace treaties. Military movements require advance notification to the assembly. Unless they plan to claim it is for our protection, Lee Hyun said grimly. He had seen this pattern before when other young species had been deemed too successful too quickly. First came the accusations, then the legal procedures. Finally came the restrictions that would slowly strangle human expansion. Or worse, Park's hologram leaned forward. There is more. Our intelligence sources report that assembly representatives have been asking questions about human military capabilities. They want to know about our defense fleets, our weapon systems, our production facilities. What did you tell them? Lee Hyun asked. The truth. That humanity has minimal military forces focused on defense and exploration support. That we pose no threat to anyone. Lee Hyun nodded. It was the truth, as far as anyone outside Earth's highest security levels knew. Humanity had indeed focused on peaceful expansion and scientific advancement. Their few military ships were small and designed for protection rather than conquest. But truth often had many layers. A chime from the assembly communication system interrupted his thoughts. Kim Sora answered, and her face went pale as she listened. Ambassador, she said formally, you are requested to appear before an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly in 1 hour. The charges are violation of colonization protocols, unauthorized military buildup, and threatening the peace of galactic civilization. The room fell silent. Park's hologram flickered as the quantum connection struggled with the distance between Earth and the assembly station. "Those are serious charges," Park said slowly. "If they are found valid, the penalties could include restrictions on human expansion, oversight of our colonies, or even forced disarmament." Lee Hyun stood and straightened his formal diplomatic robes. He had worn them to dozens of successful negotiations over the years. Today they felt heavier somehow, or they could demand something worse, he said quietly. "I have seen what happens to species that are judged too dangerous to be allowed freedom." Kim Sora's hands shook slightly as she prepared the diplomatic files. "We have documentation for everything. Every colony was properly approved. Every ship was registered. Every treaty has been followed exactly. Evidence matters less than politics in cases like this," Lee Hyun replied. "If they have decided we are a threat, they will find reasons to support that decision." He walked to the window and looked out at the vast station that housed representatives from hundreds of worlds. Somewhere in those glowing corridors, beings from ancient civilizations were deciding humanity's future, and from everything he had seen, they had already made their choice. "Contact Dr. Choi Jiho on the science vessel near Proxima," Lee Hyun told Kim Sora. "Tell him to prepare a full report on human research activities. If they want to question our intentions, we should be ready with complete answers." "What about Captain Yoon Daeho?" Park asked through the hologram. "His exploration fleet is only 2 days' travel from the assembly station. Should I order him to come here to support your testimony?" Lee Hyun considered this. Having human ships nearby might help, or it might make the situation worse. If the assembly truly believed humanity was a military threat, the arrival of even peaceful exploration vessels could be seen as intimidation. "Tell him to stay where he is, but remain ready for orders," Lee Hyun decided. "If this goes badly, we may need all our friends close to home." He turned from the window and faced his companions. Kim Sora looked worried but determined. Park's hologram showed the same expression Lee Hyun had seen on his friend's face during their worst moments at the academy, when impossible problems required dangerous solutions. 15 years, Lee Hyun said softly. 15 years of careful diplomacy, of following their rules, of being the polite junior species that never caused trouble. "It worked," Kim Sora said. "Humanity has grown stronger. Our colonies thrive. Our people travel freely among the stars." "Yes," Lee Hyun agreed. "And now they fear what we might become." He gathered the diplomatic files and headed toward the door. In 1 hour he would stand before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and defend humanity's right to exist as a free species. What none of them knew was that humanity had spent those 15 years preparing for exactly this moment. The assembly hall was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. Lee Hyun had never seen so many different species gathered in one place. The air recycling systems worked overtime to handle the various atmospheric needs of hundreds of different beings. He walked to the center of the hall where a small platform waited for him. Around him, tiered seating rose in circles that seemed to go up forever. The lighting was harsh and bright, designed to make whoever stood in the center feel exposed and vulnerable. Kim Sora took her place in the observer section reserved for diplomatic staff. Her face was calm, but Lee Hyun could see the tension in her shoulders. Park Min-ho watched from Luna Base through a quantum communication link. His hologram was small but visible in the human delegation area. High Arbitrator Vex of the Vorthak hegemony called the session to order. The massive alien stood nearly 3 meters tall with gray-green skin that looked like living stone. His voice boomed through translation systems that converted his words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "We gather today to address serious charges against the human species," Vex announced. "These charges threaten the very foundation of galactic peace and order." The formal accusation was read by a Quillen representative, whose multiple eyes never looked directly at Lee Hyun. The charges were exactly what Kim Sora had warned him about, but hearing them spoken aloud in the formal language of galactic law made them sound much worse. First, the species known as humans has violated colonization protocols by establishing settlements in disputed territories without proper consultation with neighboring species, Lee Hyun started to speak, but Vex raised a massive hand for silence. Second, humans have engaged in unauthorized military buildup, including the construction of armed vessels and defensive installations that exceed the limits agreed upon in their admission treaties. Third, human expansion has proceeded at a rate that destabilizes established trade routes and resource allocation agreements between elder species. Fourth, and most seriously, humans have been secretly developing weapons technology that violates the Galactic Peace Accords. The last accusation brought murmurs from the assembled representatives. Li Hyun felt his stomach drop. That charge was not only false, but also carried the most severe penalties under galactic law. I demand to see evidence of these accusations, Li Hyun said when Vex finally allowed him to speak. A Brecton military officer stepped forward with a data crystal. Evidence has been compiled by joint intelligence operations of the Vorthak Hegemony, Quillen Empire, and Brecton Confederacy. However, detailed information is classified for assembly security purposes. Li Hyun could not believe what he was hearing. You accuse my species of crimes but will not show the evidence. How can I defend against charges I cannot examine? The evidence exists, Vex replied coldly. That is sufficient for these proceedings. The trial continued with a parade of witnesses who testified about human activities across the galaxy. Most of what they said was technically true but presented in the worst possible light. Dr. Choi Jiho appeared via hologram from his research vessel to defend human scientific activities. He had been Li Hyun's closest friend since university, and one of humanity's most respected scientists. Human research has always followed galactic protocols, Jiho stated calmly. We have shared our discoveries with the scientific community and contributed to the advancement of all species. A Vorthak scientist interrupted him. Yet your species develops technology at an unprecedented rate. Your population grows faster than any other species in known history. Your expansion shows no signs of slowing. Progress is not a crime, Jiho replied. Humanity works hard to better itself and contribute to galactic civilization. Rapid progress by younger species has historically led to conflict and instability, the Vorthak scientist said. Prevention is better than cure. Captain Yoon Daeho's testimony came next. His exploration fleet had discovered 3 new habitable worlds in the past year, all of which had been properly reported and registered with galactic authorities. My ships carry scientific equipment and defensive systems only, Yoon stated. We have never engaged in hostile actions against any species. A Brecton admiral stood to question him. Yet your vessels are equipped with military-grade sensors and communication systems. Your crews include personnel with combat training. Your fleet movements follow military protocols. Standard precautions for deep space exploration, Yoon replied. The galaxy can be dangerous for undefended ships. Or perhaps you prepare for more aggressive purposes, the admiral suggested. The questioning continued for hours. Every human achievement was twisted into evidence of hidden military intentions. Every colony became proof of aggressive expansion. Every technological advance became a potential weapon. Li Hyun watched the proceedings with growing anger and despair. This was not a trial seeking truth. This was a predetermined judgment looking for justification. During a break in the session, Kim Sora managed to reach him with urgent news from Earth. Military movements are accelerating, she whispered. 3 more species have moved fleets toward human space. Our deep space monitors show coordinated positioning that looks like preparation for blockade operations. They plan to enforce whatever judgment they make here, Li Hyun realized. This trial is just for show. They have already decided what to do with humanity. When the session resumed, the final evidence was presented. A hologram showed what appeared to be human military installations on colony worlds. The images were grainy and unclear, but the Vorthak prosecutor claimed they proved human deception about peaceful intentions. These installations are clearly weapons manufacturing facilities, the prosecutor declared. Humans have violated their agreements and pose a direct threat to galactic security. Li Hyun stood to respond. Those images show agricultural processing centers and mining operations. If you examine them properly instead of jumping to conclusions— Enough, Vex interrupted. The evidence speaks for itself. The voting began immediately. Species after species cast their judgment against humanity. A few smaller civilizations abstained, but none dared vote in favor of the humans. The result was overwhelming and brutal. Guilty on all charges, Vex announced. The sentence came just as quickly. Li Hyun felt the blood drain from his face as he heard the words that would doom his species. For crimes against galactic peace and stability, the human representative will be executed immediately as an example to other species who might consider following similar paths. Human expansion is hereby restricted to current territories. Human military capabilities will be limited by ongoing oversight. Human colonies will submit to periodic inspection by joint galactic forces. The hall erupted in noise as representatives debated the severity of the punishment. Some called it too harsh. Others demanded even stricter limitations on human activities. But Li Hyun heard none of it. He was thinking about his final message, the one that would be broadcast across human space along with news of his execution. The message that would activate protocols that had waited 15 years for exactly this moment. He looked up at the communication system that would carry his words to every human ship, station and colony in the galaxy. "You make a grave mistake," he said clearly into the recording devices. "Humanity remembers its friends and never forgets its enemies." The execution chamber was a sterile white room with a single chair connected to neural disruptor equipment. The device would shut down his brain functions instantly and painlessly. It was considered humane by galactic standards. As the energy built up in the disruptor, Li Hyun's last thought was of the codes hidden in his final message. Codes that would transform humanity from peaceful explorers into something the galaxy had never seen before. The neural pulse ended his life instantly. The broadcast of his execution went out immediately to every corner of known space. And in that moment, humanity's true face began to show itself. Park Min-ho stood in the command center of Luna Base watching the execution broadcast with tears streaming down his face. Around him, other officers and staff members stared at the screens in shocked silence. Li Hyun had been more than Earth's ambassador. He had been a symbol of humanity's hopes for peaceful coexistence with the galaxy. Now he was dead. But even through his grief, Park heard the hidden message in his old friend's final words. The specific phrase about remembering friends and never forgetting enemies was not random. It was the activation code for humanity's most closely guarded secret, the final protocol. With shaking hands, Park moved to a secured terminal that only a handful of people on Earth even knew existed. He entered his authorization codes and waited for the system to respond. Similar scenes were playing out on Mars, at Proxima Centauri, and on dozens of human colonies across space. Admiral Song Mina on Mars Command entered her codes with steady determination. Her face showed no emotion as the system acknowledged her input and waited for additional confirmations. Director Kim Tae-woo at the Proxima Research Station hesitated for only a moment before adding his authorization to the growing list. His hands moved quickly across the control panel as years of careful preparation finally activated. Colonel Bang So-hee, commanding the frontier defenses at Wolf 359, was the last to enter her codes. She had hoped this day would never come, but humanity had learned long ago that hope was not enough to survive in a hostile galaxy. The protocol system required authorization from all 5 primary commanders before it would fully activate. When Bang So-hee's codes were accepted, the screen displayed a simple message that changed everything. Final protocol activated. All systems online. Awaiting orders. What happened next would have terrified the Galactic Assembly, if they had known about it. But humanity had spent 15 years making sure no one would know until it was too late. Hidden manufacturing facilities throughout human space came online for the first time since their construction. They had been built in secret, disguised as mining operations, research stations, and civilian infrastructure. The quantum forges inside them began producing materials and components that existed nowhere in official human records. The facilities were completely automated and powered by fusion reactors that had been running in standby mode for over a decade. They were designed to operate independently, to continue their work even if every human colony was destroyed. Most importantly, they were self-replicating. Each facility could build copies of itself, spreading like a virus through asteroid belts and uninhabited systems. Park Min-ho watched status reports flow across his screen as the network activated. 67 primary facilities were online and beginning production. Estimated time to full capability was 72 hours. On his personal communication device, messages began arriving from human ships across the galaxy. The activation broadcast had reached every vessel, every station, every outpost where humans lived and worked. Captain Yoon Daeho's exploration fleet was 2 days from the assembly station when they received the protocol activation. His peaceful scientific vessels immediately began receiving new orders that made him question everything he thought he knew about humanity. Retrofit all ships for combat operations, the orders read. Deploy advanced sensor packages. Activate stealth systems. Await further instructions. Yoon stared at the message in confusion. His ships did not have stealth systems. They were exploration vessels with basic defensive weapons and scientific equipment. But when his chief engineer checked the sealed compartments that had never been opened, they found technology that was decades ahead of anything officially available to human forces. Dr. Choi Ji-ho received similar orders at his research station near Alpha Centauri. Hidden manufacturing bays in his supposedly civilian facility opened for the first time, revealing production lines for weapons and defensive systems that should not have existed. How long have these been here? He asked his assistant Lee Nara. According to the installation logs, they were built into the station during original construction 15 years ago, she replied, her voice filled with amazement. But they have been sealed and inactive until now. Similar discoveries were being made throughout human space. Every major installation, every important ship, every strategic location had hidden capabilities that were now awakening after years of dormancy. The technology was impressive, but not miraculous. Humanity had not developed super weapons or impossible defenses. Instead, they had created a vast network of coordinated manufacturing and logistics that could support a war effort far beyond what anyone believed humans were capable of. More importantly, they had done it in complete secret. The Galactic Assembly monitoring stations detected unusual energy readings from human space but could not determine their source. The readings were consistent with increased industrial activity, but that made no sense given the restrictions that had just been placed on humanity. High Arbitrator Vex received reports from Vorthak intelligence services that something was happening in human territory. But the information was vague and contradictory. Some reports suggested military mobilization, others indicated civilian evacuation procedures. None of them painted a clear picture of human intentions. It does not matter, Vex told his advisors. Humanity has been warned. If they attempt any aggressive actions, the Joint Fleet will crush them quickly. But the Joint Fleet was still moving into position around human space. The alien commanders had expected humanity to accept their judgment quietly, as other young species had done in the past. Military mobilization to enforce the Assembly's will was considered a formality. They had not planned for resistance. Park Min-ho knew the alien fleets were coming. Human deep space sensors had been tracking their movements for days, but now those sensors were backed up by new detection systems that had been hidden throughout the outer system. The aliens were not trying to hide their approach. They expected humanity to surrender without a fight. Analysis complete, reported intelligence officer Kim Ji-won from her station. Confirmed vessel count is 437 ships from 6 different species. Estimated arrival time at Earth is 96 hours. And our defensive capability, Park asked. Protocol production facilities will have 38 combat-ready vessels available within 48 hours. Additional units coming online every 6 hours after that. The numbers were not encouraging. 38 ships against over 400 was hopeless odds by any calculation. But the protocol had not been designed to fight fair, Admiral. Song-mina coordinated the military. Response from Mars. Her official fleet consisted of 12 patrol vessels and 8 cargo haulers converted for defense duties. But the protocol was providing her with resources she had never dared hope for. New vessels are launching from hidden construction bays throughout the system, she reported to the command network. Stealth systems are online and functioning perfectly. The enemy will not detect them until we choose to reveal ourselves. The ships emerging from secret facilities looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels that represented humanity's public face. They were sleek, angular, and built entirely for combat. Their hulls absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them. Their weapons were compact but devastatingly powerful. Most importantly, they were controlled by artificial intelligence systems that could coordinate their actions with impossible precision. How many people knew about this? Captain Yoon Dae-ho asked during a secure communication with his fellow commanders. Need-to-know basis, Park Min-ho replied. The protocol was compartmentalized so that no single person or group could compromise it. Even now, we are only seeing part of what was prepared. Director Kim Tae-woo had been one of the senior scientists involved in protocol development. The plan assumed we would eventually face this situation, he explained. Humanity's rapid advancement would eventually be seen as a threat by older species. The protocol was designed to ensure our survival when diplomacy failed. Colonel Bang Sohee had the clearest view of what was coming. Her frontier position gave her advanced warning of alien fleet movements. They move like they expect no resistance, she observed. Formation patterns are designed for occupation, not combat. They plan to arrive, issue demands, and wait for our surrender. Let them come, Admiral Songmina said grimly. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first left Earth. Now we will show the galaxy what we are truly capable of. The protocol was more than just hidden weapons and secret factories. It was a complete transformation of human civilization from peaceful explorers to something far more dangerous. And it was just getting started. The first attack came without warning or declaration of war. A Vorthak trade convoy carrying rare minerals from the Outer Rim simply vanished between star systems. The cargo ships and their escorts disappeared so completely that rescue teams could find no trace of wreckage or survivors. High Arbitrator Vex received the report with growing anger. Pirates, he declared to his advisors. The Outer Rim has always had problems with raiders attacking isolated convoys. But 3 days later, another convoy disappeared. Then a Quillen research station went dark, its automated distress beacon cutting off in mid-transmission. A Brecton patrol fleet investigating the incident found the station intact but completely empty, as if the crew had simply vanished. Park Min-ho watched the Yao. Reports flow in from his command center on Luna. Base, the protocol network was sharing intelligence faster than the alien governments could process. What was happening to them? Human agents embedded deep within foreign civilizations were providing real-time information about enemy responses and movements. Phase 1 operations are proceeding on schedule, reported Kim Ji-won from her intelligence station. Target selection is optimal. Enemy response patterns match predictions. The attacks were not random acts of violence. They were surgical strikes designed to cripple the alien coalition's ability to coordinate their occupation of human space. Supply lines, communication networks, and military logistics were being systematically disrupted by forces that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Dr. Choi Ji-ho coordinated the biological warfare component from his hidden research facility in the Kuiper Belt. The attacks he directed were perhaps the most terrifying because they left no obvious evidence of sabotage alien crews throughout. The galaxy began reporting equipment failures that made no sense. Ships that had functioned perfectly for decades suddenly found their bio-neural interfaces rejecting commands. Organic computers that formed the backbone of alien technology started producing random errors and system crashes. The beauty of biological warfare, Ji-ho explained to his research team, is that it looks like natural system failure. They will waste weeks trying to find mechanical problems that do not exist. The alien species in the coalition had spent millennia developing technology that blended organic and artificial systems. Their computers were grown rather than built. Their interfaces required biological compatibility, and their most advanced systems depended on neural connections between organic operators and living machines. Humanity had studied these systems for 15 years. More importantly, they had learned how to disrupt them. Captain Yoon Dae-ho led the first open military engagement 3 weeks after the protocol activation. His supposedly civilian exploration fleet intercepted a Brecton military convoy carrying occupation supplies toward human space. The battle was over in minutes. Human ships appeared out of empty space with their stealth systems fully active. They moved with precision that seemed impossible for separate vessels, their actions coordinated by artificial intelligence networks that could process tactical information faster than organic minds could follow. The Brecton ships never had a chance to call for help. Their communications were jammed, their weapons disrupted, and their crews incapacitated by bio-neural interference before they could mount any meaningful resistance. When the engagement ended, the human ships vanished again, leaving behind only empty alien vessels drifting in space. No survivors, Admiral Songmina noted in her report to the command network. Standard protocol procedure. The enemy must not be allowed to report our capabilities or positions. The psychological impact was greater than the military damage. The Galactic Assembly had convinced itself that humanity was weak, and could be easily controlled. Now their forces were being destroyed by enemies they could not see, could not track, and could not fight effectively. More disturbing were the intelligence breaches that began occurring throughout alien space. Military plans were being leaked to enemy factions before they could be implemented. Government communications were being intercepted and broadcast publicly. Secret diplomatic agreements were appearing on civilian news networks. Lee Nara had worked as a cultural attaché in the Quillen capital for 12 years. Her official job was to promote understanding between human and Quillen civilizations through educational programs and artistic exchanges. Her real job was to maintain a deep cover intelligence network that spanned multiple star systems. The Quillen High Command is in complete disarray, she reported, during a secure transmission to Park Minho. They know their communications are compromised but cannot determine how. 3 different military commanders have been arrested on suspicion of treason. Similar reports came from human agents throughout the coalition territories. Shin Hosub in the Brecton capital reported that their military leadership was spending more time investigating internal security breaches than planning operations against humanity. Kang Miso on the Vorthak homeworld described a government that was beginning to turn on itself as paranoia spread through their leadership. The genius of the protocols, intelligence operations, was that they created a self-sustaining cycle of suspicion and distrust. Each security breach led to investigations that disrupted normal operations. Each investigation created more opportunities for intelligence gathering. Each new piece of intelligence could be used to create additional breaches. The alien coalition was being destroyed from within by their own responses to human activities. But the most devastating attacks were those that targeted economic infrastructure. Trade routes that had operated safely for centuries became hunting grounds for invisible human raiders. Commercial shipping ground to a halt as insurance companies refused to cover vessels traveling. Through areas where attacks had occurred, the Galactic Assembly tried to maintain normal economic activity by providing military escorts for commercial vessels. But the escorts themselves became targets. Human forces seemed to know exactly when and where to strike for maximum impact with minimal risk. "How are they doing this?" demanded Vex during an emergency session of the Assembly Military Council. "Our intelligence services report no unusual human military activity. Our deep space sensors detect nothing, yet our forces are being systematically destroyed." General Krath of the Brecton military had lost 4 patrol fleets in the past week alone. "They are using some form of advanced stealth technology that our sensors cannot detect," he reported. "Either that or they have infiltrated our command structure so completely that they know our patrol routes and schedules in advance." Both theories were correct, but the alien commanders could not bring themselves to believe that humanity was capable of either achievement. The Quillen Empire began withdrawing its outer system, garrisons to protect core worlds from human attack. The Brecton Confederacy suspended all non-essential military operations to focus on homeland defense. The Vorthak hegemony imposed martial law on its member species as civil unrest spread through their territory. Director Kim Tae-woo monitored the political situation from his command post at Proxima Station. "Coalition morale is collapsing faster than predicted," he reported to the protocol network. 3 minor species have already withdrawn from the alliance. Several others are requesting separate peace negotiations. The war that was supposed to crush human resistance was instead tearing apart the very coalition that had started it. Colonel Bang Sohee's frontier defenses had been designed to hold off invasion fleets until help could arrive from the inner system. Instead, her forces had become hunter-killer groups that stalked alien patrols throughout the border regions. "Enemy behavior patterns are becoming predictable," she observed during a tactical briefing. "They cluster their ships together for mutual protection, which makes them easier targets for coordinated strikes. They avoid areas where previous attacks occurred, which limits their operational flexibility. They are fighting scared." Park Minho studied the strategic situation with satisfaction. The protocol was working exactly as designed. Humanity had not tried to match the alien coalition ship for ship or soldier for soldier. Instead, they had attacked the enemy's ability to function as a coordinated force. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow," he announced to the command network. "Target selection expands to include civilian infrastructure supporting the war effort. Rules of engagement remain the same. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of our involvement. Admiral Song Mina received the new targeting orders with grim determination. The war was about to escalate from military operations to total economic warfare. Humanity gave them 15 years to treat us fairly, she told her fleet commanders. They chose to respond with betrayal and murder. Now they will learn what it means to threaten the survival of our species. The silent war was about to become much louder. 6 months after Li Hyun's execution, the galactic economy was collapsing. Trade routes that had operated safely for thousands of years were now considered too dangerous for commercial shipping. 3 major trading companies had declared bankruptcy. 2 alien governments were facing internal rebellion from species that could no longer afford the cost of the war. Park Minho stood before a holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones marked areas where human forces were actively operating. Yellow zones indicated regions where commercial activity had been suspended due to security concerns. Green zones showing normal activity were shrinking every day. Status report, he requested from Kim Ji-won at the intelligence station. The Quillen Empire has lost control of 4 outer rim territories. Local governments have declared independence and are requesting protection from human forces. The Brecton Confederacy is facing a military coup as junior officers blame senior leadership for the disaster. The Vorthak hegemony has imposed food rationing on 12 member worlds due to supply chain disruptions. The numbers were staggering. But Park knew they represented real suffering by billions of innocent beings throughout the galaxy. The protocol had been designed to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing economic and political disruption. But the line between military and civilian targets became blurred in a war of this scale. Any requests for peace negotiations? Park asked. 17 minor species have sent unofficial diplomatic communications through neutral channels, Kim Ji-won replied. They want to negotiate separate agreements with humanity independent of the main coalition. This was the breakthrough Park had been waiting for. The alien coalition was beginning to fracture as individual species decided their survival was more important than galactic unity against humanity. Admiral Song Mina coordinated the naval war from her command center in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The location had been chosen carefully to remain hidden from alien long-range sensors while providing access to the hidden manufacturing facilities that were the backbone of human military power. Fleet status report she requested from her operations officer. 237 combat vessels operational. Production rate is holding steady at 6 new ships per day. Enemy losses in the past week include 42 military vessels and over 300 civilian transports. The human fleet had grown far beyond what anyone in the alien coalition believed possible. More importantly, the ships were being operated by artificial intelligence systems that never got tired, never made mistakes, and could coordinate their actions across multiple star systems simultaneously. Captain Yoon Dae-ho led what had become known as Liberation Fleet Alpha, responsible for operations in the former Quillen territories that had declared independence. His mission was to protect the rebellious worlds from Quillen attempts to regain control while demonstrating that humanity could be a reliable ally. The Kepler 442 system government has formally requested human protection. He reported during the daily command conference. They are offering permanent basing rights and full military cooperation in exchange for defense against Quillen retaliation. This was exactly the kind of political victory Park had hoped for. By offering protection to species that rebelled against the coalition, humanity was creating a network of allies throughout the galaxy. But the war was far from over. Dr. Choi Ji-ho had expanded his biological warfare program to target the food production systems that fed the coalition worlds. The attacks were subtle but devastating, causing crop failures that appeared to be natural disasters while actually being the result of genetically modified organisms designed to disrupt alien agricultural systems. The beauty of this approach, he explained to his research team, is that they cannot prove we are responsible. The organisms we introduced appear to be natural mutations. The crop failures look like random ecological disasters. The food shortages created political instability throughout coalition space. Hungry populations began questioning why their governments were spending resources on a war against humanity instead of addressing basic needs at home. Lee Nara's intelligence network had expanded far beyond the Quillen capital. Human agents throughout the galaxy were now coordinating a propaganda campaign designed to turn public opinion against the war. We have obtained recordings of the original assembly sessions where they planned Lee Hyun's execution, she reported to Park Min-ho. The recordings show clearly that the charges against humanity were fabricated and the trial was predetermined. The release of these recordings created a scandal that rocked the Galactic Assembly. Public opinion began shifting as ordinary citizens realized their governments had started an unjust war based on lies and political calculations. But perhaps the most devastating development was the technological demonstration that occurred above the Vorthak homeworld. A single human ship appeared in orbit around the heavily defended planet without triggering any of the sophisticated sensor networks that protected it. The ship made no aggressive moves and responded to no communication attempts. It simply appeared, remained visible for exactly 1 hour, then vanished again without trace. The message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, against any target they chose. High Arbitrator Vex received the report of the incident with growing desperation. How many ships do they have? He demanded of his military advisors. How are they moving undetected through our most secure systems? General Krath had no good answers. Our best estimates suggest they have at least 500 combat vessels, possibly more. Their stealth technology is decades ahead of anything we possess. Their coordination indicates artificial intelligence systems far more advanced than we believed humans were capable of developing. And our chances of victory? Vex asked. The room fell silent. No one wanted to be the first to say what everyone was thinking. We are losing, General Krath finally admitted. Our military forces are being destroyed faster than we can replace them. Our economy is collapsing. Our population is turning against the war. 3 member species have already withdrawn from the coalition, and more are considering it. Colonel Bang So-hee's frontier forces had evolved from defensive units into deep strike teams that operated throughout coalition space. Her soldiers had become experts at infiltration, sabotage, and psychological warfare. Target analysis complete, she reported to the command network. We have identified 17 critical infrastructure nodes whose destruction would cripple the coalition's ability to continue military operations. Estimated time to complete operations is 6 days. Park Min-ho studied the target list with mixed feelings. The facilities Bang So-hee had identified included power generation plants, communication hubs, and transportation centers that served civilian populations as well as military forces. Destroying them would end the war quickly, but would also cause massive suffering among innocent beings. Negative on infrastructure targets, he decided. Continue current operations against military and logistics targets only. We are fighting to defend humanity, not to commit genocide. This decision would extend the war but would also preserve humanity's moral authority in the post-conflict galaxy. Park knew that how humanity conducted itself during the war would determine how other species viewed them for generations to come. Director Kim Tae-woo had been monitoring alien government communications for signs that peace negotiations might be possible. The Brechton government has sent unofficial diplomatic signals through neutral channels, he reported. They want to discuss terms for ending hostilities. What are they offering? Park asked. Recognition of human sovereignty, withdrawal of all military forces from human space, and reparations for the illegal execution of Ambassador Lee Hyun. In exchange, they want guarantees that human forces will not attack Brechton territory or support further rebellions in their space. It was a reasonable offer, but Park knew it was only the beginning. The other members of the coalition would need much stronger incentives to abandon their war against humanity. Send a response, he decided. We are willing to discuss terms, but negotiations must include all coalition members. Separate peace agreements are not acceptable. Either the galaxy accepts humanity as an equal partner, or the war continues until our enemies lack the ability to threaten us. Admiral Song Mina received reports that alien military construction had ground to a halt throughout coalition space. Shipyards were being evacuated, research facilities were being moved to secure locations, and military personnel were being reassigned to defensive duties. They have given up any hope of offensive operations, she observed, during a strategic planning session. Their entire focus is now on protecting what they have left. The war had reached a tipping point. The alien coalition could no longer sustain offensive operations against humanity while defending their own territory from human attacks. But they also could not surrender without losing face before their own populations and the watching galaxy. Something had to break the deadlock before the conflict destroyed what remained of galactic civilization. That something would be humanity's final ultimatum. The message was broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy. It appeared on government communication networks, civilian news channels, and even personal communication devices. No system could block it, no authority could stop it, and no technology could trace its source. Park Min-ho sat in the rebuilt office that had once belonged to Lee Hyun. The symbolic location was chosen carefully. Behind him, holographic displays showed human ships positioned throughout galactic space, no longer hiding but visible as a demonstration of humanity's reach and power. People of the galaxy, he began, his voice carrying to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. For 6 months, your governments have waged war against humanity based on lies, fear, and political ambition. Today, that war ends. The statement was simple, but everyone who heard it understood that this was not a request or negotiation. This was humanity announcing their terms for peace. The final protocol ends today, Park continued. Humanity offers terms to all species of the galaxy. Treat us as equals, honor your agreements, and respect our sovereignty. In return, we will rebuild what was destroyed and work toward a better future for all species. He paused, letting the words sink in before delivering the warning that would define galactic politics for generations to come. Refuse these terms, and discover what other protocols we have prepared. The broadcast ended there, but its impact was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, governments that had been preparing for continued warfare suddenly found themselves facing populations demanding immediate peace negotiations. High Arbitrator Vex watched the human ultimatum from his command center with growing despair. Around him, his advisors argued about response options, but they all knew the truth. The Vorthak hegemony could not continue the war. What are our military options? Vex asked General Krath, though he already knew the answer. We have lost 70% of our combat fleet, Krath replied. Our supply lines are completely disrupted. 3 member species have declared independence. Our economy is in complete collapse. We have no military options left. The Quillen Empire was in even worse condition. Their outer territories were in open rebellion. Their trade networks had been destroyed, and their government was facing a crisis of legitimacy that threatened the survival of their civilization. Only the Brecton Confederacy had maintained some semblance of order, and they had already begun secret negotiations with human representatives through neutral intermediaries. Dr. Choi Ji-ho received orders to begin the most important mission of his career. As humanity's new chief ambassador to the galaxy, his first task was to establish the framework for post-war relationships with former enemies. The Lee Hyun Memorial Institute for Interspecies Cooperation will be built on the site of the old assembly station, he announced during his first diplomatic briefing. It will serve as a neutral ground for all species to meet and resolve conflicts through dialogue rather than warfare. The symbolism was powerful. The place where Lee Hyun had been executed would become a center for the peaceful coexistence he had died trying to achieve. Admiral Song Mina oversaw the transition from wartime to peacetime operations. Human military forces remained at full readiness, but their missions shifted from combat operations to peacekeeping and humanitarian assistance. Our ships will provide security for refugee convoys from war-torn systems, she announced to her fleet commanders. We will protect trade routes for any species that wishes to resume commercial activity. We will demonstrate that humanity can be trusted to use its power responsibly. Captain Yoon Daeho's Liberation Fleet Alpha became the model for human peacekeeping operations. His forces established safe zones in former conflict areas, protected civilian populations, and helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. The key is showing them we are not conquerors, he explained to his officers. We fought to defend ourselves and to establish our right to exist. Now we must prove we can be partners in building a better galaxy. The peace negotiations took place on a neutral space station in unclaimed territory. Representatives from every major species gathered to work out the details of the new galactic order. The human terms were surprisingly reasonable. They demanded recognition as a sovereign species with full voting rights in galactic governance, They wanted representation proportional to their population and economic contribution. They insisted on reparations for the illegal execution of their ambassador and the unprovoked war against their colonies. But they also offered benefits that no one had expected. Advanced medical technology that could extend lifespans for dozens of species. Agricultural techniques that could end food shortages throughout the galaxy. Energy systems that would make poverty obsolete on hundreds of worlds. Linara served as humanity's chief negotiator, drawing on her years of experience in alien cultures to find common ground between former enemies. Humanity has learned much during our time in the galaxy, she told the assembled delegates. We learned that strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. We learned that fear without understanding leads to conflict. We learned that cooperation produces better results than competition. The negotiations were difficult and sometimes heated, but the alternative was a continued war that no one could win. The alien species had seen what humanity was capable of when threatened. They had no desire to discover what might happen if the conflict continued. Director Kim Tae-woo coordinated the reconstruction efforts that began even before the peace treaties were signed. Human technology and resources flowed to damaged worlds throughout the galaxy, rebuilding what the war had destroyed. This is our investment in the future, he explained to skeptics within the human government. Every world we help rebuild becomes a potential ally. Every life we save becomes a voice for peace in their society. The reconstruction was not charity. It was smart politics that transformed former enemies into grateful partners. Colonel Bang. Sohee's forces evolved from combat units into disaster relief specialists, who responded to emergencies throughout the galaxy. Their reputation for efficiency and professionalism helped change how other species viewed human military power. We are not occupying forces, she reminded her soldiers. We are peacekeepers and protectors. Our mission is to help others, not to dominate them. The formal peace treaty was signed exactly 1 year after Lee Hyun's execution. The ceremony took place at the newly completed Lee Hyun Memorial Institute, with representatives from over 200 species in attendance. Park Min-ho delivered the closing remarks at the ceremony. Ambassador Lee Hyun believed that different species could work together for mutual benefit. His death showed us the cost of prejudice and fear. His memory inspires us to build the peaceful galaxy he dreamed of. But everyone present understood the real message behind the ceremony. The memorial was beautiful and inspiring, but it was built with technology that could be converted to military purposes in a matter of hours. The peace treaty was generous and fair, but it was enforced by human fleets that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. The galaxy had learned the hardest lesson in human history. Humanity could be peaceful, generous, and cooperative partners. They preferred negotiation to conflict and sought win-win solutions whenever possible, but they would never again allow themselves to be victims. The Vorthak hegemony collapsed within 2 years of the peace treaty. Its member species formed independent governments that quickly sought alliance with humanity for protection and economic partnership. The Quillan Empire survived, but was reduced to its core systems. It spent decades rebuilding its reputation and eventually became one of humanity's closest allies in galactic affairs. The Brecton Confederacy transformed itself into a peaceful federation, dedicated to scientific advancement and cultural exchange. Their military became a partner force that worked closely with human peacekeeping operations. New species entering galactic civilization were introduced to the post-war order through the Lee Hyun Institute. They learned about the benefits of cooperation and the consequences of aggression through carefully designed educational programs. The final protocol remained active but dormant, its manufacturing facilities and weapon systems maintained by automated systems that required no human oversight. Every species in the galaxy knew it existed. Most hoped they would never see it activated again. But some understood that the protocol was not just a weapon system. It was a promise and a warning that would define galactic civilization for generations to come. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not as supplicants or conquerors, but as equals who demanded respect and would enforce it if necessary. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries, but it was also more honest about the realities of power. And in the end, perhaps that honesty was Lee Hyun's greatest legacy.